What's up, everyone? As you can see, it's not Halloween season, and I'm in a tank top that's not Halloween related or anything like that. I'm in a Justice League tank top, which means I am doing DC movies and comic book movies. I do other things besides horror movies, guys. Come on, but this is the persona I've now taken on. So even when I do non-horror movies, I'm gonna have this mask on because I'm an idiot. But anyway, yeah, I'm gonna be talking about Superman movies, and yeah, I'm gonna be talking about every single Superman movie where he's the main character, so the solo ones, not where he's part of an ensemble like Batman v Superman and Justice League, which I'll get to those later. But today, just Superman. Yeah, so let's do it. Superman and the Mole Men is technically the first theatrically released feature-length film based on the DC Comics character, so I included this for completionist sake. This is the first time George Reeve plays Superman, who plays him throughout the 1950s in the Adventures of Superman TV show. This film revolves around these strange mole people who come out of the ground in this mining town, and this angry mob of people want to get rid of them, and Superman swoops in, calming the angry mob and protecting the mole men. This definitely feels like a theatrically released TV pilot. It's less than an hour long, but the movie does a great job of demonstrating Superman's morals. Yes, it looks cheap and it definitely feels old, but George Reeve really had a handle on the character and Superman wanting to protect these unknown underground figures despite not knowing anything about them and trying his best to calm down the angry mob in 1951 is very progressive. Superman and the Mole Men is definitely recommended for the hardcore Superman fans who want to see the first full-length movie that shows that even in the early 50s, it was all about truth, justice, and the American way. So 7 capes out of 10.
Superman, the movie.
Superman the movie is the blueprint for everything we know and love about comic book films, for better and for worse. So we get Marlon Brando in this movie, which is freaking crazy. He's a wise philosophical Jor-El who's the biological father of Superman, and he sets the tone for this epic galaxy-spanning coming-of-age story. Christopher Reeve masterfully plays the dual role of Clark and Superman, where you believe a god amongst men could hide in plain sight just because he puts on glasses. Him and Margaret Kidder, Lois Lane, have romantic screwball energy that you really get attached to. This goofy version of Lex Luthor, played by the legendary Gene Hackman, is not my favorite interpretation, but Hackman can be both sinister and cartoonish and knows how to play a live-action comic book villain that I think influences later villains in other comic book movies. This movie just has this epic, adventurous tone, evoking the feeling you get from watching 2001: A Space Odyssey and Star Wars, and then you just feel moved by Superman's purity and heroics and wholesomeness. Superman the movie is quite simply the blueprint, the godfather of all modern comic book movies. A lot of it visually still holds up, and Richard Donner, the director, with his impeccable vision and direction, indirectly wrote the rulebook for everything to come. Everything's been influenced by this movie, so let's get to 10 out of 10 capes.
Adventure continues in Superman 2.
Superman 2 is a flawed sequel. Richard Donner gets kicked out mid-production, and we get Richard Lester to fill in, who does Superman 3 as well. His style is way more cartoonish, so that's why this movie feels the way it does. So Lois finds out Clark is Superman, and Clark chooses to give up his powers to focus on romance and being normal. Christopher Reeve and Margaret Kidder have great romantic chemistry, and you want them to be together, but the world just needs Superman. Zod, the guy from the first movie who gets sent to the space prison, the Phantom Zone, escapes from it and invades Earth. Terrence Stamp's Zod is very over the top, but he is a good villain. I still enjoy this movie, but I'm not crazy about it. And this movie is just more cartoonish and kiddie, and kind of just feels a little off. I do see how influential this movie is. Zod invading Earth definitely inspires Man of Steel, and Superman losing his powers and trying to chase romance is very Spider-Man 2. I may not love Superman 2, but it takes a risk in Superman wanting to be normal and then facing the consequences of what a world without Superman would be. This gets 7 out of 10 capes. Superman 3, oh boy. This is when it starts going downhill, but I had fun. This is the one with Richard Pryor, the legendary comic, as a computer genius who teams up with an evil rich dude to take down Superman. This movie isn't great at all, but it actually has some moments to it. A lot of the movie is about Clark in his hometown of Smallville. I quite like seeing Clark going to his high school reunion and reconnecting with his high school sweetheart, Lana Lang, played by Annette O'Toole, who plays Martha Kent in Smallville, which is a cool moment for Smallville fans. Reeve and O'Toole have really good chemistry, and there's some really wholesome moments between them. And then Superman gets an altered kryptonite that just turns him evil, and these scenes are pretty hilarious. He's just a jerk who doesn't save anybody anymore, and he purposefully strains the Tower of Pisa just because. Like, what is going on here? This evil Superman definitely inspires this. But the best thing about this movie is probably the climactic split persona battle between evil Superman and Clark in the junkyard. This is an awesome fight, and I love it, and I wish this movie had this energy throughout. Superman 3 is very silly and cartoonish, but it has its moments, and aspects to enjoy like the Smallville scenes, Lana, and evil Superman. Richard Pryor and the wannabe Lex Luthor using supercomputers is just lame, so this gets 6 out of 10 capes.
Superman 4, his most important adventure, the quest for peace.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Superman 4, The Quest for Peace is a terrible, terrible movie. And it is such a sad note for Christopher Reeve to go out on. Well, more on that later. This movie is considerably cheaper than the first 3 movies, and this plot just gets too dumb and cartoonish. The movie starts with an interesting premise. Superman getting rid of all the nuclear bombs in the world, but once Lex starts planning to make a dude from the bombs, Nuclear Man gets born, and this is where the movie falls off a very steep cliff. I feel like they reuse flying scenes over and over again. Remember when Superman erases Lois's memory in 2? Well, she finds out again. They go on the same flight from the first movie, reusing footage from that first movie, and then he erases her memory again. This is ridiculous. Nuclear Man, oh my god, what a guy. I wish he had more personality, but he just doesn't quite get there. Superman 4 sucks, but I'm laughing about it, and so it's not the worst thing ever, but it sucks. 4 out of 10 capes. And then there's Superman Returns, which is just a giant mixed bag. Like, what? Come on. So, X-Men guy Bryan Singer directs this, and this is a direct homage to the original 2 Superman movies, and it technically takes place after the second one, and disregards 3 and 4, so those movies technically do not exist in this movie. It's just the first 2, and then this. Which, okay. Brandon Routh, who literally came out of nowhere, plays Clark Superman in this, with the performance heavily inspired by Christopher Reeve, and you know what? He actually does a pretty good job. He looks the part, and he has the right attitude for it. Kevin Spacey plays a more serious version of Gene Hackman's Lex, and he gives a very good villain performance that's both sinister and campy. The plane rescue sequence in this movie is amazing and the highlight of the film. The tension and chaos that leads to Superman saving the day, the way the scene is shot and how it moves is all fantastic. I just wish this movie kept this energy throughout. So now it's time for a rant. So at the end of Superman 2, Clark erases Lois' memories of their romance. But apparently, Superman impregnates Lois in this continuity, and they have a child. And the movie begins with Superman returning to Earth after 5 years because he thought his dead home planet somehow reappeared. What an idiot. And he just abandons his child. Like, what a deadbeat. Overall, Superman Returns is just 2 hours and 34 minutes of Superman being a deadbeat dad. But in all seriousness, I'm pretty mixed on this movie because it has great individual aspects, like the cinematography when he's flying, but it also has a bloated, boring, weird plot. So I'll give this 6 capes out of 10. It's watchable, it's entertaining, but god damn, it's too long. Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, is an alternate version of Superman 2, where it restores as much of Richard Donner's original Superman 2 before Richard Lester took over.
And thank you, Michael, for reconstructing my film as close to the original version as I intended it to be.
This is the version I definitely prefer. Not only is this movie's tone and editing much more in line with the first movie, but there's newly restored scenes that have never been seen until this was released in 2006. Marlon Brando's presence, he's back in this, is very much welcome, and he elevates the movie. And then John Williams' score being used again makes a world of a difference. By the way, that score, the first movie and this, is fantastic. There's a new scene where Superman gives up his powers and Clark goes on this whole monologue, and it is amazing because Christopher Reeve and Marlon Brando are just acting their asses off, and we understand why he makes this choice and how dire it feels, and the tone is just great, and to give up his powers for love. I love the Richard Donner cut. It's not perfect, but it's pretty amazing. We have this sequel that Richard Donner intended, which is a tragic, intimate Superman story where we see what could happen if Superman chose love over being a hero. 9 capes out of 10. Man of Steel remains polarizing to this day, but I still love it. The movie asks, what if a full-on first contact alien invasion war were to happen today? I love that the film goes for that and doesn't hold back. The movie looks incredible. The special effects have aged very well, and the cinematography is spectacular. I love the over-the-top action, because with how powerful Kryptonians are, this movie doesn't hold back on the damage they would cause to the real world. The Krypton prologue is awesome. It's a mix of Star Wars, Matrix, and Avatar, and Russell Crowe as, Superman's biological father, Jor-El, is just a badass, and he's giving these amazing philosophical lines about being a hero that it's just moving, man. I like Henry Cavill's Superman. It's literally his first day on the job, and this is more from his perspective as an alien and what his place in the universe is. Michael Shannon as Zod is great and gives this committed performance where you kind of agree with what he's doing, but he's just a little too extreme about it. Man of Steel makes these risky choices that'll forever divide fans like this. But, I love this epic modern but I love this epic modern interpretation of Superman. So yeah, this gets 9 capes out of 10. Superman from 2025 is the start of a new cinematic DC universe. James Gunn, known for Guardians of the Galaxy and the Suicide Squad, directs this with his now signature style. I love how this is a fully formed DC universe from the get-go. Everything just exists, and this is a young Superman in the middle of all that wackiness. David Cornsweet is great as Superman. He's just this infectiously wholesome dude who thinks kindness is the new punk rock. Nicholas Hoult as Lex plays a sinister, yet emotional Lex who just hates Superman for existing, which leads to some funny one-liners and other scenes where you just see how unhinged he is. It's both hilarious and kind of intimidating. Rachel Brosnahan as Lois is very charming. The scene where Lois is interviewing Superman with hardball questions is one of the best Lois and Clark interactions put to screen. Krypto the Superdog is a very, very naughty dog with superpowers. So he has these scenes with Superman where he's just being a bad boy, and it's very funny because dogs with powers would probably behave this way. Mr. Terrific was definitely the standout of the supporting heroes of this movie. I love his unique personality, and his arsenal of T-spheres were awesome, and how he used them. The movie's action scenes and visual effects are very cartoonish and over the top, and I can see how this would turn off some people. But it did grow on me, and I felt immersed in the action by the end, and I was charmed by it. Superman is not perfect, but this is a very fun, colorful movie with a delightful Superman in the middle of a wacky live-action comic book universe. There's some standout scenes and some cool characters, so this gets 8 out of 10 capes. Well, those are my Superman thoughts. I will be getting to the Batman and other DC movies eventually. So, always believe in truth, justice, and the American way. Bye now.